Hello, welcome to Fiber Focus, the podcast that explores the world of fiber optics and all things connectivity. This podcast is brought to you by Sumitomo Electric Lightwave. I'm your host, Meredith Neely, joined today by Greg Pierce, who is our Senior Product Manager for Connectivity Products. And I know we're going to be talking about some of the conditions that are impacting the market when it comes to data center and enterprise customers and beyond them, network infrastructure challenges in general. So, Greg, take it away.
All right. Well, it's nice to be with you again, Meredith, and wonderful opportunity. I always enjoy doing the podcast and talking to our customer base out there. Yeah, so today, of course, we live in this environment that's kind of a very hectic environment. We've got a lot going on with AI, and that's driving a lot of demand, as well as other things. I'm reminded of that, the ancient curse, may you live in interesting times. Well, certainly we are maybe a bit cursed in that regard. But certainly there's a lot going on with AI that's putting a lot of pressure on the supply chains and the whole infrastructure need for data centers and enterprise networks. And then you take that, you then add to it various geopolitical things that are going on around the world that obviously can impact supply chains and that type of thing. And then add to that, things like we've been dealing with tariff situations where maybe we're dealing one day with tariffs. There's a lot of posturing and things going on in regards to tariffs. So maybe you're dealing one day with huge price increases and the next day, those prices increases drop off. So there's a lot of fluctuations out there in that regard. And so that puts a lot of strain on the supply chain, supplying into these data center builders, to the contractors, et cetera. And I just wanted to give some thoughts about, one, the problems that we're seeing as a supplier into this, but then also what are some of the things that we think customers can help us do to help mitigate themselves in that situation. So.
Very well put. So at a time when network infrastructure has never been more important in people's lives, right?
Right.
And the operations of a business. And so thinking about our customers and everything that they're dealing with, can you tell us a little bit about the impact that these conditions are having on our customers and customers in general in the industry?
Absolutely. So if you think about it, one of the things that everyone knows in regards to AI, it's driving a huge amount of fiber infrastructure increase to be able to power the AI systems, to power the data, provide the data to these AI systems, et cetera. So we're seeing a huge increase in needs for fiber optic cable, for connectors. At the same time that's going on, then we're also seeing a lot of adjustments going on to these very products. We're seeing new connectors developed that have smaller footprints, very small form factor connectors. We're seeing new developments in cable where they're getting cable diameters. I say we are getting cable diameters down to smaller sizes. And we're going to smaller fiber sizes instead of maybe 250 down to 200 or maybe even smaller. And then there's fiber developments themselves. The very core component that is in the midst of all this continues to be developed. So there's those things going on, and that, of course, creates a lot of problems with, for example, lead times. When you've got all this stress on the manufacturing, it boils down to one of the things that all companies kind of hate is uncertainty, because it's very difficult to plan. And so whether you're a supplier or an end customer, those uncertainties are very difficult to work with. As a supplier, those uncertainties show up in, well, how much capacity are we going to need? How long is that capacity going to be used? How much is it going to cost us to do that for that period of time, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got that issue going on. And so it drives, right now, what we're seeing is all this demand is spiked up pretty heavy, which is driving this lead time increase in the marketplace. And so I'll go off on a little bit of another tangent. It's almost a little bit like a rodeo. and by the way, some of us have been through this rodeo before. So it's not our first rodeo, as the saying goes, because our communications market has, over the years, had these ups and downs with it, just like up and down in a rodeo, riding a bucking bronco or something. So anyway, what I want to do today is talk about some of the specific issues that we're seeing, and then give customers some advice on how to weather that storm, how to make it through the rodeo, maybe make it more or less unscathed, maybe win, but at least make it through in good shape and for competing the next time and on forward. So
I was just going to ask about our customers and in these uncertain times, how with so much that they can't control, like how they can weather it and still be successful. I'm talking like from the designers to the builders, the operators, contractors, installers. Like this is having an impact throughout.
exactly.
So what can they do? Help.
Through all those layers,
Yeah.
and there are multiple layers, but they all are impacted similarly. Well, I mentioned lead times and issues with product availability. Obviously, the capacity issues are exposed now to the marketplace with all this demand coming up, and we see these price fluctuations, et cetera. But some things that customers can do. I think number one, look at your supplier base and develop trusted partnerships with those suppliers, with the suppliers that you want to have a trusted relationship with. And that is going to help a lot in communication, in open communication, in being able to work together during these times of which are very dynamic. There's a lot of flux, and you need to have the flexibility. So I think that's a very key thing for customers to do. And I think to find out working with trusted suppliers like that, it's not the same as way back in the old days where it was, just cheapest price is going to win it. We're in such a dynamic area. You need to get hooked up with suppliers that know the various changes that are going on in the market and how to navigate through all that with the best products for your need. And then involve those trusted suppliers early on in the design processes. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have them in your design room designing your data centers and that kind of thing. And in fact, they're probably not going to want to do that because how do they get paid on that? Maybe in some cases they will. But more often, bring them into the process. Let them know what your thoughts are. Let them know what you're thinking, and then bounce ideas off of them. Because again, in these changing times that we're dealing with the technologies changing, with supply chains changing, with the suppliers, they're dealing with this on a daily basis. So they know how to help steer the ship through these waters and get a customer the best situation they can for them. Also, this is a little bit of an oxymoron, but one of your key design constraints should be design flexibility. That's it. So had to catch that line again. But so I think right now, given the supply chain problems and all that, if you design too rigid of a system and you don't have the ability to be flexible with it, then you're setting yourself up for what is going to happen when you do run into those supply chain issues. They're going to happen. I mean, even the best suppliers have supply chain issues because some of these, they're beyond our control. And so you have to plan in that flexibility, allow your suppliers some flexibility there, be able to work with them to work on that flexibility. And then I think you will find as a customer, you're going to avoid a lot of starts and stops and a lot of delays that you otherwise wouldn't avoid, unfortunately. And then the other thing, work with these suppliers, forecast early and order early. Mm-hmm. Give them early forecasts. Maybe you have the agreements. Hey, this is just a forecast and things can change. But get those forecasts in early. Let them know what you're thinking. Let them know the sizes that you're dealing with. And so they can start planning along with you and give you flexibility options as well. We have a great amount of products, both our company and within the industry, that allow for flexibility on these things. So allow that to play into it. Just don't be waiting. We see this with sometimes from customers where they're just thinking that a product's going to be on the shelf, especially with custom products. It's just not going to not be there. I'll give you an example with cable assemblies. Our customers, I'm sure, know this. There are millions of combinations of cable assemblies that are needed. It just depends on what you're doing specifically. So anyway, the more time you can give yourself to have that stuff built at the suppliers, more lead time, and to work with suppliers that are efficient and can turn that stuff around quickly. Suppliers that can customize, I will say that, can be a very flexible advantage here as well, or things that would help in these situations. So that's kind of the some advice that I would, from having been around a little while, some advice I would give on that.
I think it's a great advice. And honestly, it kind of feels like some interpersonal lessons too, right? About collaboration and communication and flexibility and being receptive to feedback. I think those are good principles to live by and do business by as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, the trusted partner, I feel like that is something that Sumitomo Electric Lightwave does well. And also like having the depth of portfolio where you can like take a flexible approach to any given challenge and challenging times,
Yep.
like, and possibly a mix of custom and in stock products, right?
Exactly.
To meet
Yeah,
the
you need to
customer's
have both.
requirements.
You've got it. Some of the things are standard and they're going to be in stock, and you're going to want to have those in stock. And others, more custom stuff. It's just occasionally you might have something that works with it, but a lot of times those are just going to have to go make them when they're called for. So
Yeah. Just giving the customer what they need.
you got it.
Perfect.
You got it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming back to the podcast today, Greg. It was nice chatting with you as always. And
Thank you, Meredith.
thank you for joining us today for this episode of Fiber Focus. We hope you will subscribe, share this episode, and join us again for an upcoming episode soon.